Okay, we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the fourth session of our webinar series, which is discussing the Power Platform, in particular, focusing on some of the SharePoint practices. So today, we'll actually be talking about 5 things to do to get you started off on the right foot when you're building an intranet site with SharePoint. So kind of highlighting how to start out with the right approach and how to go with that. So I'm Dave Kleist. I am the Director of Operations here at BlueNet, and joining me today is Zach Welding, who is our Senior Solutions Architect. And we'll be going through the materials here in a second. So what's our agenda? So obviously, the introduction we just covered through. And then we'll talk a little bit about, why start off on the right foot, what's important, the idea of like, okay, great, I want an easy to use website. What does that actually mean? I mean, what does it mean to have a good website? And then 5 things that get you started on making an easy to use good intranet site that you're working with. What do each of those 5 things look like? So we'll show you a quick demo on those topics, and then we'll have a summary in case there are any questions that you have that you would like us to go ahead and answer. So easy to use, what does that actually mean? So, we hear that tossed around a lot. It's like, oh yeah, that's easy to use, but it's a little more difficult. You're kind of like, well, I know when I see it. But if you break it down to a few things that you're looking at, so one of the things to think about is like if something's easy to use, like looking at a website or intranet site, first off, can I find anything? So do I have the ability, if I'm actually using the site, to be able to find the things that I want when I'm working with the site? Related to that, as I'm looking for stuff, do I get lost? So is the site set up such that as I'm navigating my way through, I can understand where I've been, where I'm going, and where I'm sitting in relation to everything else, so that if I do take a wrong turn, I don't end up going, well, I just got to start all over again. That sort of implies that there is some logical consistency to the platform. If you think about it, as someone is using the internet site, they have a little mental map on where they think things should be, how they would actually navigate to those points. So easy to use, have that component about logical consistency. Related to that, do I know what I need to do when I'm actually in the site? Is it obvious that, oh, I need to click here to go to this particular one, or this is how I submit a form, this is what I need to do? And if you look at all those particular attributes, what it really is like, is the user able, easily and comfortably able to create a map of what they're trying to do against the site that you've built? And so what we'll actually talk about then is, okay, sounds great, pretty easy, but why is that so hard? I mean, everybody's used sites where it's like, I just don't, this is just insane, I can't do this. And if you think about it, really going back to that map analogy, when you create an internet site, it's very comparable to, creating a map by hand. If you think about it, so what you're trying to create with an intranet site is a map into your information and your processes that you have as a part of the organization. You need to share that with a larger group. Well, like trying to draw a map by hand, if you get the scale wrong, if you start at the wrong spot, if you have the wrong level of detail, that map is quickly, as you try to expand it to encompass the whole thing you're trying to tell someone about, is going to get to a point where it's not usable. It becomes crunched. Oh, I got to take shortcuts, or I got scrinched here, that kind of thing. So that's the same idea. So what that means when we go to build a website like that is you need to have that planning and forethought. as you're part of doing that. And what that really means is that making the right decisions at a high level before you really start getting started. And so that's where we're going to kind of show you those 5 things that really help you start down the road of building an easy to use website.
All right, so the 5 things that we've identified that lead to well-adopted, well-performing, and intranets that last are creating a global navigation structure that works for everybody. We've found that having an employee directory that is up to date is also important. Using forms, not just uploading an old PDF form that you had and calling it a day, but actually digitizing these, making these forms mobile friendly, building automated processes around them, presenting organizational news, and creating consistent themes and layouts. I wouldn't say that these are in any particular order of importance, but as far as like when you're actually building it, I think starting with having an idea of what your global navigation structure is going to be is probably going to be the first thing that you're going to do before you jump into any of these other ones. So what do we want with global navigation? Years ago, before modern SharePoint rolled around, you had to get navigation plugins to get what we call a mega menu. Mega menu is a 3-tiered menu structure rather than like the little accordion style drop downs. It's a big flyout. You hover over it, you get different categories, then all of your links are organized there. We want to try and organize the links by how we think our end users are going to look for them versus how the data is actually architected on the back end. So you might have links that live in HR and links that live in finance. They don't need to live in a department-based dropdown. We want to organize that so that it makes sense to the end user, and then making sure that it's clear and consistent across all pages. This is accomplished by using the hub site functionality. So to demonstrate this, if you guys have been in any of our previous webinars, we've showcased this same intranet a few times. So taking a look at their navigation, you can see we've got, I think, seven or 8 different top-level nodes. Kind of try and stay between 7 and 10. You get any more of that, and it starts to get a little bit scattered. And again, we're organizing these based on how we think the employee or the end user would want to find data. Rather than building a huge department dropdown where we've got everything that lives under administration and then a flyout, we don't want the user to have to know where that information lives. We just need them to know, hey, I'm looking for benefits, or I'm looking for that employee recognition thing. I don't remember if it lived in HR, if it lived in communications. We take the guesswork out of it and architect this in a way that makes sense to the end user. So you can see here there's links that point to places outside of SharePoint. The majority of these all live in human resources. Some of them, like this one, lives at the root. Looking at the employee experience dropdown, again, this lives in HR. You can see the URL popping up in the bottom left there. That lives in HR. These live at the root. There's some stuff that lives in communications. There's some stuff that lives in HR. So rather than making the user think, gosh, I wonder where that lives, we've organized it in a way that is more intuitive for them. Keeping in mind mobile friendliness too, we'll kind of touch on this when we get to the theming, but everything's mobile friendly. And again, keeping navigation short if possible. This one's a little bit long. You can see it doesn't show what it is. It's coming soon. I had to hover over it to see that. So trying to condense the titles as much as you can also goes a long ways. Second thing would be an employee directory. So providing a searchable and up-to-date directory of all staff can be huge, especially in larger organizations, so that you can figure out who's in charge of what, sending them a quick message rather than having to type in their email address, over an Outlook and then trying to figure it out that way. You have a couple different options. With Edina, they have the bind tuning suite, which has a people web part built into it. And that looks like this. It's an actual web part that you can just add to a page. You can decide, hey, do I want this web part to look at Entra, or do I want it to look at SharePoint search, or do I want to manually maintain a directory from a SharePoint list? You can do all of the above. Most of the time, you're going to connect it to Entra. At the same time, now we need to make sure that IT has a reliable and consistent process that is keeping all of that stuff up to date. So if somebody changes managers, not only HR and your payroll system need to be updated, but your directory also needs to be updated, and then all this will work and flow nicely. If you didn't have bind tuning, your only other option to create an employee directory outside of buying a third-party web part or something like that would be to use the Search PNP web part suite. That is a free Microsoft developed suite of web parts that is geared towards search, but they have some pre-built templates in there that let you make it into like an employee directory. So an example of what that could look like is this. It's not a widget that you can just install on a page. It's a whole page with 3 different web parts added to it, and then they all have to be configured. So we had to add the search box web part, we had to add the search filters web part, and then we had to add the search results web part. There's a couple layouts, like I said, that you can choose that make it look kind of like an employee directory. And it functions about the same. We've still got the divisions and departments that we can filter on. If I were to scroll down further, I could filter off of job title and location as well. But you know, it's bigger, it's not a widget, and it's a lot harder to set up than the bind tuning option. Thirdly, forms. So like I mentioned before, rather than just keeping your forms in PDF or Word form, you have lots of opportunity to turn those into digital forms so that people can fill them out online. Our first webinar, I believe, was all about this. So if you have more questions or curiosities about some of the more granular things you can do with forms and automation, I'd suggest going back and watching that webinar. But just as a quick recap, these forms can be used in a variety of different ways. These guys have them for a couple different things. They use it a lot for their employee recognition. So if I wanted to submit a safety shout out, or I wanted to submit somebody for the IQS Impact Award, or I wanted to opt in to share my birthday on the birthdays web part, all of that is done with a form. Previously, if you didn't use forms, you might have to grab a template somewhere, fill it out, and then send it as an attachment via email. From an administrative standpoint, not the greatest, because now they have to do something with that. They might save it somewhere, they might not, and now it's just buried in email. So forms are a great way to drive adoption towards the intranet, because now you're giving them a reason to go to the intranet. It's not that they just have to go to a file server and grab a copy of a file. They actually need to go here and fill out this digital form in order to start the process. And that concept goes for all of these points. It's providing them, again, we're trying to drive adoption to the intranet, so we need to make sure that people are going there for a reason. By putting forms out there and making that the only possible way for things to be submitted, that's one way. As we get through here, again, same thing with news. Here's the next one, news. Rather than sending emails with all of your updates or your newsletters and announcements, you need to publish those through the intranet so that that's the only place that they live. Sure, you could send out an email notification with a link to the news article, but again, that's going to drive adoption and force them to go to the intranet and become engaged there as well. So how do we do that? With the structure that we recommend, and we've gone over this before in our previous series talking about architecture, you have your hub and then all of your different department sites that are connected. By having the news come from the department that it originates from versus just having communications own the entire intranet, it kind of gives a more personalized feel, and again, helps employees, end users see the news that they care about. So on our homepage here, we have all of our news tagged with the site that it came from. You can see it's all being rolled up in one spot. I have a couple options. If I don't want to navigate anywhere else, I can filter by the site right here, and just see stuff from finance. If I want to have a more immersive finance experience and see everything about finance, I would go to that department site. So if I go to the finance site, they have their own news here, pre-filtered to just show their stuff. So when they need to post a new news article, they can do that right from their site. News post. You can also do news links. So if you have content that is coming from somewhere outside of your organization, the article's already been written, you can use the news link functionality and paste the link in there. It's going to automatically grab the title, automatically grab a thumbnail if it finds a picture, and then set the description. And then that will appear in line with all of your homegrown news as well. You have the ability to create separate areas for certain types of newsletters as well. Again, a lot of theirs is revolving around employee recognition. So if I were to go to, I'll go back to the safety shout out. So again, this is a big concept, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's some text here. There's a form you have to fill out. There's some contact information. And then there's the actual news articles that were posted about the safety shout outs. So previously, you'd probably maintain a Word document with this type of information. You'd have maybe you'd have that built into a Word form where they would have to fill this out and then send an email to whoever they needed to send it to. And then if you ever wanted to go back and look at who the latest winners were, somebody would have to maintain some sort of folder structure or PDF merge of all of the recent winners. So by using this functionality with kind of the more filterable news sections, you can accomplish that right within SharePoint. So we've got a news web part that is filtered across the entire intranet to only show me news articles that were posted as a safety shout out. The way that works is with some columns that we created in the back end. So we've created, when everybody creates news, if you were to look in the back end, there's a field called news type. We have all the different types of news that they post, and then these web parts are filtering off of that. To make it foolproof for the end user, we use news templates. That way, those fields for whatever type of news article it is pre-filled, and the end user doesn't even need to worry about that. So if I'm in HR and I wanted to submit a safety shout out, I would go to news post and I would pick that template right here. This template has that field preset already. So I just click on this, I create the page, I post it, and it filters to the proper news web parts that it needs to go to. And the last one, themes that flow. So again, Edina has the bind tuning suite. I would call that kind of your next level up option by using bind tuning themes. Without bind tuning, you still have the ability to customize the headers and set your colors, but it's not gonna all be inherited automatically throughout your hub. The navigation will be the same throughout. The theme colors will be, but the headers will not. So if I go back, I'm not sure if it's going to let me go here or not. So things like this, the header, all of this stuff, this is not inherited by the hub association. The theme, you can see this is connected to the hub site, so I can't change that. That's just colors. So if you didn't have the bind tuning suite, on every site that you connect, you'd have to make sure that you're going in and setting the header, the navigation, and the footer to have the exact same settings so that it stays consistent. With bind tuning, like I mentioned, you have the ability to inherit a lot of that stuff automatically. It also provides you the capability to do things that you can't do out of the box. So if we open up the bind tuning settings option, you can see we can set the favicon. That's the little icon up here in the tab. There's no easy way to change that out of the box SharePoint. This has that built in. Changing logo width and height, all of that stuff. Some of this stuff is the same as far as like the compact and the default. That out of the box has that as well. A shy header out of the box doesn't have that. That's where if you scroll down, the header changes and goes smaller. And then the nice thing about this is that with bind tuning, all of the settings that I'm doing here, I can save them on the hub. And when I'm on a department site, I can say, grab the settings from the hub site. So I don't have to redo all of this. That's especially handy if you get into some of the more nitpicky things. We did some custom theming for these guys. We changed the fonts on a couple of things. We changed the width and height of a couple of like the address bars and like the font, I think, for some of the news articles. All that's done with custom CSS. So you can see here, we've got a ton of CSS that was written to handle that. And if I were to navigate to any of the department sites, all of that is automatically inherited because of the bind tuning hub site inheritance settings. Again, some of that stuff wouldn't even be applicable out of the box. There's no way to inject custom CSS without some sort of third-party extension, but you can see here where I'm inheriting that from the hub site. So it provides the same constant theme across the board. Everything's consistent. I always know where to look. And the same thing goes for page layouts. Web parts are in the same spot. Navigation stays consistent across the entire intranet. I didn't see anything come across in the Q&A yet. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post those in there, and we can wait for those to come up. Otherwise, Dave, if you want to wrap up with the summary, we can go with that.
Sure, we'll give it a second. Not seeing anything coming through. Okay. So what you've seen here is basically, those high-level steps that you would want to start with to actually build out your intranet site to get started off on the right foot, to get that consistent, easy to use, compelling intranet site that you want to build with this particular things. I think we've seen a number of topics here where what you can really see is creating that high-level approach, both with the architecture and with theming and structure. That makes it more straightforward for someone who, obviously isn't the developer, isn't a technical person, to come in and actually use the site type thing. And with that, if you do end up having any questions, do feel free, you can jump to the next one. Summary. So like I said, spend some time doing that up front, get that plan put together, make sure you start off on the right foot, to get to your correct website. And then should you have any questions, follow up after this session, feel free to reach out to myself or to Zach. Here are our email addresses. And if you wanted to call and talk to our sales department, there's our sales number there as well, and that will call in, and one of our account managers will get back to you. And with that, I would like to say thank you for spending time with us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session.